Hello and welcome to The Knowing Show. I am your host, Christene Marie. Y'all, tonight we are reminding ourselves of what is more true than what we grew up hearing, than perhaps even what we grew up believing. It's more than what we're feeling. It's more than even this physical, horizontal world that feels so incredibly real to us. We pinch our skin and it hurts. We feel the pain of loss. We sense this physical world and the emotions associated with it. And it feels like that is the essence of who we are in so many ways. And so tonight we are remembering this additional layer of what constitutes you and me. And in this process, we are effectively reminding ourselves of what is true. And as we have been talking about over the last couple of days, and actually even just today, we were talking about this morning. We're in New Hampshire, and my friend is going to be going to Salem, where the Salem witch trials happened. And it caused this really meaningful conversation this morning with my darling's boys, where we were talking about how some people, if they're jealous, how some people, if they're angry, if they have past pain, if they are even guilty, they will fabricate a lie or alter reality in the name of, well, this is my experience. And so when you look back at the history of how the Salem witch trials started, it was actually these young girls who assigned that somebody else, some other woman, was acting weird or twitching, and ultimately they had bewitched them, and then they were acting with dark powers. And that accusation from like young girls just started this whole series of lies and kind of, I mean, real treachery. What happened was devastating, where so many men and women died and kind of under the name of witchcraft that never was the case. So you see the harm of when we cannot differentiate our experience from factual reality. And then it's like this snowball effect. We're trying so hard to prove and justify why we're feeling the way that we do, that we end up changing the fabric of the physical external facts of the truth of what is. I like to think of it as kind of like lowercase t is the truth of our experience because it is real, but capital T truth is more so the objective reality of, well, okay, what are the actual facts of the case? When you watch a courtroom, you're going to hear people say, this is the facts. And then they will bring in the personal testimony and the witness of an individual sharing their experience. And both are important. Both add a dimension and color to the full picture of reality. So our understanding of our experience is incredibly important to us then understanding the full picture of reality. But it needs to be under the subservience, like it needs to come under the hierarchical order of the capital T truth, the facts. But even more so than that, there's even a greater truth than just the facts. At the end of the day, when we consider this question of, well, who am I beyond what has been told to me, beyond what I feel, who was I created to be at before the origin of time, and what then will be the greater truth out of everything beyond that? Here's the thing. The facts may actually be devastating. The capital T truth versus our internal experience, lowercase truth. That factual truth might be and yield devastating results when you really sit with it. Maybe you actually were abandoned. Maybe you actually were betrayed. Maybe you actually were, intentionally harmed. Well, okay, does that have the final say about your identity? Does that have the final say about your worth? So for so long as we're assigning kind of like this overemphasis on the lower T truth of our internal experience, or adding on this kind of emphasis on the objective truth of the facts and the data, they both still have danger if we're not looking and even taking a step back from a spiritual lens. And I'm not talking about black and white every single time this is how we handle it, but when it comes to this question of who are we, there needs to be concentric circles almost, where we know the core basis of our identity, and then we add layers to it that go on outside of that for us to get deeper access to, okay, well, that is a part of who I am. But at the end of the day, my core identity is rooted and grounded in something that is unchanging, something that is eternal. And then we can stand up straight when maybe we do make a devastating mistake or something devastating is done to us. Primal Wellness, hello, my friend. You say, isn't truth subjective? Kind of using this consideration of the truth of our experience. I think that's very subjective. And then we add on that layer of, well, the truth of the objective facts. But then there's this additional layer of truth that really is that which is eternal, that which is deemed as the real truth underlying the fabric of our of our physical world, that which is declared by and about us by our Creator. And so when we add on these layers upon layers of truth, now we can start really honing in on, okay, well, how do I weed through this multi-layered experience of the human existence and understand that there are going to be different layers of what is real. And I put that in quotation marks because we just talked about 3 dimensions, but then also allowing for the respect and honor of what each one yields. Each one has a story. There's a story associated with our internal experience and the truth there. There's a story related with the objective facts and the truth there. There's a story associated with who we were assigned to be by our Creator. And then there's also a story about the other person's experience that maybe is threatening to alter my view of my own self. So we're sitting here with almost kind of like the author's pen of our life, because the way that we interpret these stories informs the way that we then show up in relation to the actions we take as a result. So Viktor Frankl, author of Man's Search for Meaning, he writes and recounts his tale in a German concentration camp. And he has this infamous line between choice and response, between stimulus and response is choice. So every single one of us has a choice that ultimately is informing our response. But before we kind of look at, okay, well, what choice am I going to make? We actually need to consider, well, what is my belief? What is my belief system? What are my internal narratives? What are the stories I'm believing that are going to inform the choices I'm going to make about my response? So really at the crux of it, yes, there's a stimulus. The stimulus is what that other person is saying. The stimulus could be how we feel. The stimulus could be just observing the objective facts. The stimulus could be, what does God say about this situation, this person, about myself? And then based on what we believe around each one of those stimuli, then it informs our choice, which then informs our action and our response. So as we consider this question of, well, who am I really? Are we aware of the stimuli and thus the stories that are constituting our belief systems? Because in every single choice lies a belief, and that belief was conjured and created as a result of the stories that we've told ourselves, the stories other people have said about us, the stories that, frankly, that God tells about us. And so whose story are we going to believe? Who has the greater access to our soul, to our spirit? Whose voice is going to be loudest in our minds? I just want to jump over here to the chat. Brian, I'm so grateful for you. Y'all, I just want to give a shout out to Brian. He is our moderator. He has so graciously offered to do this for us. And I'm so grateful for you, my friend. Thank you for keeping the chat, keeping the chat clean. I'm so grateful for the ability to jump in here and see the handles and names of people that I know and love. Retro Rocket, I'm so glad to see you. It's been a little while. Ellen Hoffman, my own sweet mama. I'm so glad to see you. I'm so excited to see you next week. Primal Wellness, I'm glad you're here, my friend. Thank you. Code, hello. Good to see you. Philip, hello. Thank you for joining. It's good to see you. Code says truth is objective. If truth was subjective, then everyone would have their own version of truth. You know, it's interesting. There's the layers. You know, when you kind of look at an onion, you're going to peel back the layers and layers. So there's the nucleus of the truly truly objective truth that I have found and experienced to be the truth that is assigned to us by the creator of the universe. And so, okay, that is the objective core nucleus of what constitutes truth. And then it gets like almost like more and more subjective from there on out. But there's an element of just because it's subjective does not mean that it does not hold weight. And honestly, I think this is where we can get really, really dangerous, especially if you're like me, where we really value logic. We really value kind of that left side of the brain. And if you, like me, had viewed emotions as weakness in the past, we therefore would not honor the subjective. And because we're not giving attention to the thing that's kind of crying out for attention, it's kind of running rampant in the background. It's like this programming system that's running a little bit void because the lack of attention leads to viruses in our operating system because we're not addressing it. And in simply addressing it and simply shining our attention and dealing with whatever is coming up, I really love the analogy of, our bodies have the lymphatic system. It deals with toxins and waste on a regular 12-hour cycle. Our brain has a glymphatic system, does the same thing. There is nothing for the soul. There is nothing internally on an emotional level that allows for the cleansing and purification of our emotions. So that is something we have to do. And y'all, if we don't do it, it really does, it kind of sits like a virus. And then the thing that's interesting is that it starts corroding and corrupting the good code, the good amount of programming that's there. Those little lies, we talked about this earlier about, we're in New Hampshire and the Maine area. And, we were teaching my darling's boys tonight about Salem and what happened there with the Salem witch trials. It all started with just a little lie based on someone's experience that was undealt with, that was never handled. And y'all, I'm seeing it now. I'm seeing the effects that are so damaging of jealousy, the effects of anger, the effects of blame. Usually the blame that comes when we're shifting blame and focus on somebody else because we know we're guilty. And so when we start habituating these behaviors without paying attention to the source, realizing that there might actually be an unhealthy emotion there that is really crying out for attention, then we do start fabricating and changing reality. And it's like, we look at these AI tools and they're so powerful, yet they're so dangerous because we don't know when has it passed into the area of hallucination. That's when we start getting nervous because we actually cannot decipher between the truth anymore. So it's when it twists ever so slightly. Brian, you just said matter of perception. Yes. So where and how is our perception being colored by stories, by emotions that have yet to be analyzed under the guise of that objective truth of, well, God, what is your opinion on this? The ultimate source of truth, having the proper place and seat so that it's almost like it's at the pinnacle. The voice and perspective of God is at the very pinnacle of the hierarchy. And then we bring the matters and the situations and the experience and the emotions under the surveillance of the capital T truth, shining its light down and bringing light to the whole house so that no part of us is in the shadows. No part of us is hiding out in the darkness, but instead every part of us is being kind of forced to reckon with the truth. The subjective truth, perhaps, but the subjective truth under the light of the objective one, that it holds the greatest weight. So with that, I'm actually going to read today's Course in Miracles. It is lesson 191. We started reading this at the beginning of the year, and we've missed a couple of days here and there, but it's been so encouraging. So we're doing this straight through the end of the year. Lesson 191, who are we? This is directly in response to this question, who are you? Today's lesson says, I am the Holy Son of God himself. Here is your declaration of release from bondage of the world, and here as well is all the world released. You do not see what you have done by giving to the world the role of jailer to the Son of God. What could it be but vicious and afraid, fearful of shadows, punitive and wild, lacking all reason, blind, insane with hate? What have you done that this should be your world? What have you done that this is what you see? Deny your own identity, and this is what remains. You look on chaos and proclaim it as yourself. There is no sight that fails to witness this to you. There is no sound that does not speak of frailty within you and without. No breath you draw that does not seem to bring you nearer to death. No hope you hold, but will dissolve in tears. Deny your own identity, and you will not escape the madness which induced this weird, unnatural, and ghostly thought that mocks creation and that laughs at God. Deny your own identity, and you assail the universe alone without a friend, a tiny particle of dust against the legions of your enemies. Deny your own identity and look on evil, sin, death, and watch despair snatch from your fingers every scrap of hope, leaving you nothing but the wish to die. Yet what is it except a game you play in which identity can be denied? You are as God created you. All else but this one thing is folly to believe. In this one thought is everyone set free. In this one thought, in this one truth are all illusions gone. In this one fact is sinlessness proclaimed to be forever part of everything, the central core of its existence and its guarantee of immortality. But let today's idea find a place among your thoughts, and you have risen far above the world, all the worldly thoughts that hold it prisoner. And from this place of safety and escape, you will return and set it free. For he who can accept his true identity is truly saved, and his salvation is the gift he gives to everyone, in gratitude to him who pointed out the way to happiness that changed his whole perspective of the universe. One holy thought like this, and you are free. You are the Holy Son of God himself. And with this holy thought, you learn as well that you have freed the world. You have no need to use it cruelly and then perceive this savage need in it. You set it free of your imprisonment. You will not see a devastating image of yourself walking the world in terror, with the world twisting in agony because your fears have laid the mark of death upon its heart. Be glad today. How very easily is hell undone. You need but tell yourself, I am the Holy Son of God himself. I cannot suffer. I cannot be in pain. I cannot suffer loss, nor fail to do all that salvation asks. And in that thought is everything you look on wholly changed. A miracle has lighted up all dark and ancient caverns where the rites of death echoed since time began. For time has lost its hold upon the world. The Son of God has come in glory to redeem the lost and save the helpless, and to give the world the gift of his forgiveness. Who could see the world as dark and sinful when God's Son has come again at last to set it free? You who perceive yourself as weak and frail, with futile hopes and devastated dreams, born to die, to weep and suffer pain, hear this. All power is given unto you in heaven and earth. There is nothing you cannot do. You play the game of death, of being helpless, pitifully tied to disillusion in a world where it shows no mercy to you. Yet when you accord it mercy, will its mercy shine on you? Then let the Son of God awaken from his sleep, and opening his holy eyes, return again to bless the world he made. In error it began, but it will end in the reflection of his holiness. And he will sleep no more and dream of death. Then join me today. Your glory is the light that saves the world. Do not withhold salvation longer. Look about the world and see the suffering there. Is not your heart willing to bring your weary brothers rest? They must await your own release. They stay in chains till you are free. They cannot see the mercy of the world until you find it in yourself. They suffer pain until you have denied its hold on you. They die till you accept your own eternal life. You are the Holy Son of God himself. Remember this, and all the world is free. Remember this, and earth and heaven are one. Y'all, I cannot tell you the times where I have been reminded of that capital T truth that really does transcend this physical world, the light that shines into the dark places of this physical world, the stories that have been told us, the stories that we have believed ourselves that really do yield hope. And they change everything. And they bring about power. There's this biblical concept of power, love, and a sound mind that comes from an end result to abiding in the truth. So the question is, what are we filling our minds with? I have this practice that has just made such an impact in my life, and it kind of models what my parents modeled for me growing up. And I call it vertical alignment. It's both a practice and a principle. And the principle of vertical alignment is going back to kind of that pyramid concept of like the hierarchy is the perspective of God Himself at the very, very pinnacle. And then everything else falls down and cascades from there. And that light of truth shines throughout. And to that concept, I just love this kind of visual of in the morning. It's a principle of bringing my mindsets and my behaviors, my beliefs, my thoughts, my moods, every part of me, my physical actions, all of that comes into alignment under the hierarchical order of, yes, who do I want to be, which is a very, very important question. But at the end of the day, who was I created to be in the first place? What is the greatest of all truth? Understanding and knowing that changes everything else. And then everything else comes into submission of that divine identity. And from there, the opposite happens. The opposite happens where we were just saying, the power and love and sound mind that comes from knowing the truth, this being set free that comes from knowing the truth. Yet I love how she actually talks about what is the antithesis of when we deny this superordinate truth, when we deny our own identity. She says, deny your own identity and you will not escape the madness which induced this weird, unnatural, and ghostly thought that mocks creation and that laughs at God. Deny your own identity and you assail the universe alone, without a friend, a tiny particle of dust against the legions of your enemies. Deny your own identity and look on evil, sin, and death, and watch despair snatch from your fingers every scrap of hope, leaving you nothing but the wish to die. Y'all, I gotta tell you, I had about 20 minutes today where I related exactly with this. I felt so alone. And I had the thought of like, man, it would just be easier to, like, what's the point of living? And that the depths to which we can all go, it's kind of a matter of, okay, well, what's the frequency? What's the duration that we camp out there? To what extent do you really allow those thoughts to perpetuate? What do you do in result of that? All of that needs to be discussed if we were to really dive into depression here. What I'm talking about, though, is actually the power of the mind, the power of our identity and the truth therein. So the power of our dissonance from the truth can really lead us down a very dark path that makes us feel alone, that makes us feel unsure and uncertain of who we really are, that really allows for fear to come in. And it says, snatch from your fingers every scrap of hope, leaving you nothing but the wish to die. Because at the end of the day, when we really kind of play fear all the way to its logical conclusion, it's very nihilistic in some ways. So once hope is gone, it can be incredibly hard to come back from that. I think that there's this line from Shawshank Redemption which says, hope is the best of things. So when we are in alignment with our identity, all of that is completely reversed. We never feel alone. We have the power that comes from knowing the truth of who we are. We have a sound mind. We have sound judgment. We're able to say, no, that's not right. I was talking with a woman a couple months ago where we were talking about how do we combat these lies when the lies feel so powerful. And man, wouldn't it be just so freeing to have the ability to have kind of a thought start crossing our mind, and we take it captive. We take every thought captive. We analyze it. We look at it. We're just like, that has no power over me. That's not true. And sometimes some thoughts, as they cross our mind, we actually do need to take it, capture it, look at it, and say, oh man, this one has deep roots. I actually need to understand the story associated, because this thought is not just a merely passing thought ship in the night. This is a real belief that I hold about the world. And this thought is one that threatens to inform my choice, that informs my response. We were talking earlier about between stimulus and response is choice, but every choice is rooted in a belief system. So we need to have the wisdom and the aware. It's really about being aware, having the awareness of the thought that crosses our mind over, is this a thought that is simply one that I just need to say, that's a lie? Or is it one that I need to take captive? I need to examine it and understand this has the power to influence the way that I show up in the world. This thought is actually rooted in a belief system versus this thought is rooted in a passing story that was told to me, that was maybe shared, or I just saw it I saw it on TikTok, or I saw it on a social media platform, and I'm just going to completely release it because it hasn't taken root yet. So we need to have the awareness and the wisdom to know what has roots and what doesn't, because that which has roots needs to be tended to in a very different way than that which is just a passing thought, where frankly, if it's a passing thought, the more we give our attention to it, the more we're actually perpetuating it by giving our energy to it. So it actually behooves us, and it is wisdom to say, you know what, I'm not going to place any of my attention there. I'm going to let that go and actually reorient my attention elsewhere, and thus send my energy to another topic, versus the idea that has roots. And so some of the warning signs that this thought has roots is that I am emotionally activated. I have, my body is responding in a way that is not normal if it was just a passing thought. Another way is I know that this is rooted in the past because not just that I feel it so deeply, but I actually remember how this narrative even started. This thought is rooted in a core belief, and I have it frequently. So am I sensing something physically in my body? Do I have a past memory associated with it that I kind of am already aware of? And then frankly, what's the frequency? Does this come up often? Is this a recurring pattern of thought in my mind? I just want to jump here in the chat. Mike Walker, I'm glad you're here. Thanks for joining. Peter, good to see you. Mike says, the only truth that exists is the one that is chosen by the majority. That means there's only your truth, the one you've chosen to believe. Recognize you've actually chosen someone else's perspective. It's so, I so appreciate you saying that, Mike. And I've heard a lot of people talk about that. And, I love kind of considering, if that's true, then to your point, there is no real truth there, and everything then is subjective. And then it is just, well, what's popular demand? All right, well, there's times where genocide is popular demand, so everyone's going to approve that. There was genocide in 1942, and it has continued onward since. And so, okay, so, and obviously genocide before that too. So there's these very moral questions that we're forced to contend with if what you're saying is accurate. If there's no objective truth, well, then it's just a matter of the masses. And what does everybody collectively believe? And then as things change and time evolves, then that now becomes permissible. Incest, even if it's, incest within family members, obviously parent-child, with animals, there's just a lot more things that are becoming more permissible because we actually do not have any kind of objective truth. So I hear what you're saying. And frankly, I think that that's a very popular opinion these days, is that there is no objective truth that grounds us in morality. Uncle Bud, what's the point of living? It's a crazy question. On the one hand, I'm going to die one day, so what's the point? On the other hand, it's like I've got a shot to have good fun time, so why not go for it? I mentioned this earlier about nihilism. If you really think about that question of like, what's the point? And just go all the way down from the lens of what's the point? We're all going to die anyways, versus what's the point? I want to live a full, rich, meaningful life. I've got one shot. It's like, man, what is the emotion driving the question? And you can land and arrive at two very, very different outcomes. One is a rich, meaningful life where you don't waste an opportunity and you have no regrets and you live large and you live fully and you're not holding anything back. There's this line from one of my favorite songs, and it says, I want to live this one wild life. I want to rip it apart. And the exact same question can perpetuate an entirely different outcome, which ultimately is nihilism and likely will lead to suicide. Because logically, if you're going to follow it, I'm going to die anyways. And you know what's interesting? I've seen many religious people have this similar debate. What's the point of living here if I just want to go be with God? Well, why not kill yourself? If this life is just a stop and you're just wasting time until your life's over. So this question of purpose is so important for us to consider. Of, we're looking at this. I do believe that there is a hierarchy of objective and truth that extends beyond this physical world. When that light shines and cascades into every corner of our lives, that is where I, among so many others, have found so much meaning to be conjured. Honestly, it's so easy. I was struggling with this today. It's so easy to go inward and forget that there is a real impact we can make in the lives of others. This element around identity, she says this in today's lesson, there is power, and literally to the point of almost like the salvation of the world through the love that we can extend, where we are effectively being the ambassadors of God and the presence of God through the love that we give. And that changes everything. Now my life is teeming with purpose. Now every day is so incredibly impactful, and it's like a joy and a privilege to wake up every morning. I'm just looking back at the chat. Uncle Bud, you're offering such very different perspectives, which is interesting to read. Y'all, thank you so much for joining tonight. Brian, so grateful for you, my friend. Thank you so much for joining and helping lead this conversation. Y'all have a wonderful, wonderful evening. I will be back on with you tomorrow morning. And at the end of the day, regardless of what you believe, I think that it really allows for us to have this moment of looking in the mirror of how do I want to live my life? How do I want to actually show up? How do I want to feel? And then what are the belief systems that are actually going to get me closer to that outcome? That's one approach. Another is, well, is there any kind of universal truth? And that has to be examined. And I have found actually that in the universal truth, who I want to be and how I want to live and the outcomes thereof actually fits really, really beautifully into that. Because in service, in love, in giving, I have found so much meaning, so much joy, so much fulfillment. And who doesn't want that for their lives? So I hope you have a wonderful evening. I will see you tomorrow for lesson 192. Grateful for you all. I'll see you soon.